Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's Robbie Rhino, and in today's video we'll be taking a look at the long-awaited return of the Valkyria Chronicles tanks. These two tier 8 Japanese tanks are the rarest tanks in the game, and they've only been sold once before, and now is your chance to pick them up again until the 5th of April, and I'd say that they might not be sold again due to licensing, but that's obviously up to Wargaming and seeing what they can do in that department. But if you really want them, and for people that missed out on them last time, then definitely go for them now. And the best value bundle for you would be the 18,200 gold bundle for both of the tanks, and you get a 2D commander for each of them with some pretty noisy anime voice acting in those 2D crews. So the Valkyria Chronicles series is an anime series and also a series of games produced by Sega, and it's going to appeal to a certain market, of course. However, we're going to be looking at the gameplay in this video as well as the rarity of these tanks and seeing how they perform in the current meta of World of Tanks console. So obviously if you're looking to get these tanks because of the rarity and the uniqueness of them, and you like your anime voice acting and that kind of thing and the styles of these tanks, you're probably going to get these tanks anyway. But if you're looking at getting these for a sort of competitive tank, I'll say straight off the bat that these tanks probably aren't the ones for you. However, you can still get some decent results, and you'll be seeing how they perform in the gameplays in the background. I have 2 replays in each of the tanks, and the first tank up in the background is the Edelweiss, which is a tier 8 Japanese medium tank. It's got good view range at 390 meters. It's got 1400 hit points, which is the kind of standard amount for a tier 8 medium tank. The mobility is really nice. You've got a 25 power to weight ratio. You go 60 kilometers an hour forwards, 20 kilometers an hour backwards, and you have good traverse speeds. Your gun is an 88mm gun that deals 240 alpha damage on its standard AP and its premium APCR. The penetration is a bit of an issue though. It's 195mm on the standard AP, and that's quite sad and quite disappointing. You do struggle when you are bottom tier fighting tier 9 and 10 heavily armoured tank destroyers and heavy tanks and that kind of thing. You do have premium rounds that are 245mm of penetration, which is better, but it's still not enough for the front of some tanks you're going to be facing. The HE rounds are pretty pointless in my opinion as well, unless you do carry a couple for artillery at the end. It's 295 alpha damage with 44mm of penetration. The shell velocity is disappointing on the standard AP rounds at only 850 meters a second, so it feels really slow when you're trying to lead your targets. That does go up though if you choose to fire APCR to 1050 meters a second, so I do carry plenty of APCR for the penetration and also for the shell velocity when I'm going to be bottom tier or mid tier. The DPM is kind of average. It's 1920, which is 8 rounds a minute, and a base reload of 7.5 seconds. The aim time is relatively long at 2.3 seconds, and the accuracy is 0.38 base. So yeah, you're going to want to try and give this gun some love with your equipment and your commander setup, which I'll be going over shortly for you. It still feels quite derpy even with a good commander and when you have the right choice of equipment. So yeah, be warned about that. It does have 8 degrees of gun depression, but this is only over the sort of sides of the tank. It has a kind of bump on the front of the tank, so if you're facing directly at your opponent you have less gun depression, and if you sort of shoot over the sort of corner of your front of the tracks, then you do lose a lot of your gun depression, and it can be really infuriating on ridgelines. You have to expose yourself a little bit more than you want to, and you have to sort of swivel and shoot over your side if you're close quarters, and obviously that is not good when you're trying to make your armour as effective as possible. You have 15 degrees of elevation, which is kind of usable, and you do carry plenty of ammunition at 60 rounds. In terms of the armour, it's quite troll armour, especially the turret. It's 120mm, which is a strip under the gun, and the sides of the turret are 80mm, but they are well angled, so if you're sort of rocking back and forth, going side to side on the ridgeline, you are likely to bounce some rounds. And on the whole, the upper plate is 120mm and the lower plate is 80mm. And of course, with angling, when you're moving around, you can get some ricochets, especially if you are top tier. And I'll just say that both of these tanks do excel when they are top tier, especially the Nameless, but we'll talk about that in just a bit. So in terms of my equipment and commander for the Edelweiss, I run advanced optics, advanced loader and gun stabilizer, and on my commander I run Sixth Sense, Born Leader, rapid loading, steady aim, rapid aim, snapshot, run and gun, camouflage expertise and situational awareness, which is my kind of standard medium tank kind of loadout. So a lot of gun handling perks there, view range boost with the situational awareness and the camo boost with the camouflage expertise. So with my commander and my equipment setup, I now have a view range of 499 meters, which is really nice, and I found that means that I'm competitive with tier 9 and 10 tanks in terms of my view range. The concealment rating is 346 meters still concealment, which is kind of adequate. And I now have a DPM of 2,575 on my gun with a 2.1 second aim time, a 0.27 accuracy, and my reload now is 5.59 seconds. So you do fire quite quickly, but the alpha damage is quite low, but it's good for keeping things tracked. So in that game, as you can see, we went to try and get some extra damage at the end, but we kind of got blocked off by that, I think it's the Marabrecher, but we still had a good game on a city map, which isn't ideal for the Edelweiss. We got 3,099 direct damage, 115 assistance. We finish MVP with 4 kills and make a small profit of 69,000 silver. So we're going to head on now into the second replay and I'll talk you through how this tank is performing. So now we're into the second replay with the Edelweiss, and we're on Westfield, which is a much better map than Pilsen, which was obviously the city map, and hopefully this will allow us to use our view range to our advantage and also our mobility. So in this tank, if I had gun depression over the front and over the sort of front left and right of the tank, or more gun depression, I would consider going to the brawling location up in like C3-4. However, I'm going to go down this zero line, shoot it what's spotted across the town and across in front of me, and see if I can spot out for myself for my friendly tanks. So how do I feel about this tank in the meta of World of Tanks console? I think it's a very sort of mediocre tank in terms of its gameplay. I think obviously, like I said at the start of the video, that it's going to be a really cool pickup for people that are interested in the crew voices and the style, and they're interested in Valkyria Chronicles and anime. But in terms of the gameplay, it's a very mediocre tank, and it does suffer a lot when it is bottom tier. However, when you are top tier, this rate of fire does sort of keep up with quite a few tanks that are medium tanks at tier 8. However, I would say that the penetration does suffer compared to quite a lot of medium tanks, especially premium tanks that they bring out. The more they bring out, obviously, the better the standard seems to be now, and it's just about waiting for these kind of tanks to maybe receive buffs in the future. And I believe the Nameless did receive a buff quite recently. So we've pushed on down this zero line. We're using this ridge line for cover, and this is a little bit risky because there could be all manner of tank destroyers and tanks where I'm looking now, but I'm trying to use my view range to try and get out some view range and try and get some assistance, and it looks like it's paying off for us. And I'm just going to advance when I am undetected, re-stealth, and I'm going to advance and try and get around the back of the enemies that look like they are going to be taking that brawling location up to the northwest of the map. So now I'm going to push on down, and when I'm going down here, you'll see that my 499 meters view range with my commander and equipment setup means that I'm able to outspot quite a lot of tanks here. There's an E75 to my left, so I'm just going to try and get him to turn to me so that his side is to my allies, and they'll be able to shoot him in the side. We go for the track, but he does repair that. However, you're seeing the fantastic mobility of the Edelweiss here. I'm able to run rings around this E75 and I'm just trying to cause a little bit of a disturbance to him while he gets finished off, and that's taken our assistance total to 3,588, and we've put a couple of shots in. This artillery is going for cover there. We managed to get one shot into him as he's going for cover, so we're going to have to be careful. There are two artillery that are going to be hiding in that southwestern corner, but we're going to push forward now. And it just so happens that the artillery is straight ahead of me. He misses us but splashes us for quite a lot of our health, which is a typical arty thing to do anyway, but it looks like we're going to be able to get a couple of shots into this M53-55 and finish him off, taking our damage total now to 1,600 direct damage. Now we're going to come around and try and finish off this artillery. There is a tank destroyer looking at me. I'm just trying to wiggle around, use the buildings as cover, spot these tanks for my friendlies, and that's a tank that I do not want to get hit by. One of the worst tanks in the game. However, I actually just shook then. I'm surprised I didn't knock over my table. That shell just missed us, and if that hit us, then likely that would have been the end of our game. So now we're just going to try and push up here and see if we can spot the artillery from this rock, and we do. His shell misses us, and we get the kill on that GW Tiger P. Now we're going to try and get this bar to commit and track him and try and get round him. We get a shot into him, but we don't track him. I'm reversing it, which is a really bad idea. Fortunately for us, that tank has no gun depression over the front, and he blasts his shell over us. That was a misplay by me. I should have just gone forward at that point. I was trying to reverse and bait him round, and even 20 kilometers an hour wasn't quite enough because he was coming down at some speed. However, he's now looking at us. We're just going to keep his attention while our allies completely wreck him from behind, and now we're going to head on forward and see if we can get any shots into this Object 257. And this is the good thing about having a tank like this with good mobility going 60 kilometers an hour forwards, is that you have a chance at the end of the battle to pick up some extra damage. And you can see that on a map like this where it's open and you have time to work, you can make this gun work, and the reload is good enough to keep people tracked and keep dishing out damage. The 240 alpha does feel quite low, but quite a few tanks at tier 8 have 240 or around that alpha damage, so it isn't too different, and it's just a very mediocre tank to play. I was going to go in for the ram now, but for some reason I absolutely screwed that one up, and we let the 257 reload and he takes us out. But we've had a decent game here, and yeah, we're going to hop on now into the MVP screen and talk about how we did. So that ends in a victory. Our teammates helped us take that one down. We finished with a Pascucci's medal, which is always nice. Only a first class, but still a very decent game. Finishing MVP with 2 kills, 2.4k direct damage, 3.6k assistance, and a 130,000 silver profit. So now we're going to head on over and talk about the Nameless. Right then, let's talk about the Nameless, which is a tier 8 Japanese heavy tank, and from what I've seen from the matchmaker and when these tanks were first introduced, this seems to be the more popular tank, and I think I know why that is, and I will tell you why in just a bit. So this tank has 1600 hit points, which is pretty good for a tier 8 heavy tank. It has mediocre to poor view range at 370 meters, and you can boost that up. However, your main role will be brawling, especially when you are top tier like we are in this game. The mobility on this heavy tank is actually pretty good. You have a 16.7 power to weight ratio. You can go 50 kilometers an hour forwards. The reverse speed is a little bit slow at 14 kilometers an hour, and you do have to watch out because the whole unturret reverse is 26 degrees a second, so you do turn quite slowly. However, you can get into position relatively quickly. This tank also has an 88mm gun like the Edelweiss. However, this gun is a lot better. It has more penetration and it has more alpha damage. So the alpha damage on this 88mm gun is 300 on the standard AP and the premium APCR, and 360 on the HE. The penetration is 220 on the standard AP, which is pretty good, and it has fantastic premium APCR rounds at 260mm of penetration. Again, the HE rounds for me are quite redundant unless you carry a couple for artillery. It's 44mm of penetration for 360 alpha damage. The shell velocity is a little bit better than the Edelweiss on the AP at 900 meters a second, and it's 1100 meters a second on the APCR. The DPM is better than the Edelweiss at 2001. You have a base reload of 9 seconds, the aim time's better at 2.3 seconds, and the accuracy is the same at 0.37 accuracy. Like the Edelweiss, this does have gun depression problems. It has 8 degrees, but it really is only over the sides. If you're aiming over the front corners of your tracks, then you will have to expose a lot of your tank to get your gun on target. And as you can see here, when I'm fighting in the background on here on steps, I'm having to sort of fight sideways and go sideways down the hill, and I'm probably exposing way too much than, you know, I'd do it in another tank. But sometimes you have to make do. If you are facing front on with someone, you can sort of get your gun down unless they are right below you. And I had a problem the other day fighting an object something or other, a Soviet tank that was really low to the ground, low profile, and it was really difficult to get my gun down on it. 15 degrees of gun elevation on this tank, the same as on the Edelweiss, so that's sort of manageable, and you carry lots and lots of rounds, like 68 rounds of ammunition, and if you get through all of those rounds, you must have had some kind of insane game. Turret wise, and that's probably what everyone will be wondering about this tank, considering it's a heavy tank, and it is quite good news. It's a very troll frontal turret and frontal armor, and you can bounce even some really high penetration rounds when they hit some really funky angle. So the turret is 240mm on the front, 50 on the sides, and 80 on the rear, and the cupola, which is one of the biggest weak spots, is 180mm, and you will bounce some rounds. Obviously tier 9 and 10 this can struggle, however when you're top tier you are a bit of a bully. On the upper plate then, on the hull, you have to think of it like it's 5 bands of armour. So it's 220 on the lowest band, 200 on the next one up, 180 on the next one up, 170 on the next one up, and 160 on the next one up. So it's, yeah, 5 bands going across the front of the hull, and that's how you think of the armour. And the armour is kind of sloped or rounded, meaning that the angle will obviously be increased. And just a note, in the background gameplay you are seeing, I'm having some problems with this Type 59 as he's hugging me. I can get my gun down. I'm just hoping that he turns enough into my gun depression on the side so I'm able to take him out. But yeah, I'm trying to not show my sort of absolute best games that I've had where it's just me like ruffle stomping someone. I'm showing you some genuine problems with this tank, like the traverse there and the gun depression issues, and even for a relatively experienced player I still struggled and trying to get to grips with this tank. In terms of the lower plate then, going back to the armour, it's 130mm, and you will bounce some, you know, TIS 6 and 7 rounds, but yeah, you can't rely on the lower plate. However, the upper plate, if you angle, wiggle, and you go side to side and up and down on a ridgeline using your turret, you will bounce quite a few rounds, especially at tier 8, and you do sometimes bounce rounds from things like a Jagdpanzer 100, something randomly hits you at a auto ricochet angle. So it's quite a sort of good tank for bouncing rounds, and this gameplay in the background does prove that. We've already blocked 3,230 damage. So in terms of my equipment and commander then, on the Nameless I run advanced optics, advanced loader, and gun stabilizer. Optics because I did want to get my view range up so I'm able to spot for myself. Loader because I want to make that DPM even better, and gun stabilizer, you know, just to help the gun handling that little bit more, because I feel like that alongside the armor makes this thing an exceptional brawler when it is top tier and a top tier bully. In terms of my commander, I run 6th Sense, Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, Snapshot, Off-Road Driving, Situational Awareness, and Track Mechanic. The off-road driving helps with its mobility and turning on sort of soft ground and different terrains, and the Track Mechanic, because it's a heavy tank, I'm going to be brawling and I want to get my gun round to the 8 degrees of gun depression on the side. So in that game we finish MVP with 3.2k direct damage. We get a Steel Wall first class medal there. We finish second actually, not MVP, that's obviously just wishful thinking. 785 assistance, 4 kills, 3.4k blocked, and 120,000 silver. So we'll hop on now into the second replay and talk some more about the Nameless. Righty ho then, we're now into the final replay of the video here with the Nameless, and I'll just touch upon how my equipment and commander setup has changed the statistics for me. So I now have a view range of 473 meters, which is not too bad for a tier 8 heavy tank. I have a DPM of 2682, which is really nice, and it feels really good when you do get this gun singing. However, obviously you do have that factor of the gun depression and trying to get the damn thing on target. I now have an aim time of 2.1 seconds and an accuracy of 0.26 with a reload of 6.71 seconds. So what do I think about the Edelweiss and the Nameless? Well, the Nameless is definitely the most powerful tank when you are top tier. You can be an exceptional bully, especially to tier 6 and 7 tanks, and even quite a few tier 8s that have poor penetration. Drive at them, wiggle, and you can blast through them with your armour and your DPM. However, when you're mid and bottom tier, both of these tanks struggle. The Nameless does hold up a little bit better armour wise, but obviously you have the mobility with the Edelweiss to get around. So am I going to get these tanks? Well, I haven't got them yet. These are rentals that fortunately Wargaming have kindly given me to do a review with, and I probably will get them because I'm a little bit of a collector of tanks. But would I recommend maybe a new player getting them, or someone that's getting them for a competitive edge, or for the gameplay reasons? I would say no. There are more competitive tanks out there. There are more competitive medium and heavy tanks. If you're looking for something really unique like the anime style, then I'm not sure when the next kind of thing like that would be. So yeah, go for it. But yeah, there are definitely more competitive tanks. And I found that these are quite frustrating to play, both of them, because of that gun depression issue, and you have the penetration issue with the Edelweiss. So here on El Alamein, I think this map's called, we have come over to the north of the map, and we're going to be trying to duke it out with some pretty dangerous tier 10 tanks. I think there's an Andre the Giant and there's a Jagdpanzer E100, which I drove right in front of, but I think I did hear him fire, and we get a nice shot into the lower plate of the Jagdpanzer E100. And that's the good thing about the Nameless, is that you do have the better penetration and you are more competitive when you're fighting higher tiers. And I'm just going to try and be patient here, trying to use the third person camera to see around the hardcover and see when the enemy tanks aren't looking. And I'm taking a bit of a gamble that this Jagdpanzer E100 is not going to come out, and you'll see the good DPM here. I'm running combat rations and I'm just putting round after round into the side of this Andre the Giant. This poor tank doesn't have a chance now. The Jagdpanzer E100 looks like he's not coming round to help his friend out, and we're going to get all of our shots in without losing any hit points, and then we're going to go help our heavy tank fight this Jagdpanzer E100. The Jagdpanzer E100 fires, so I'm trying to swivel around as quick as possible with the slow traverse. I tried to get a tracking shot in there, but you can see the problem with the gun depression, and I'm trying to get round the side of the Jagdpanzer E100. The WZ-111-5A kind of puts me off going around. I thought he was going to block me, but now we're just going to try and reverse and hoping that he doesn't fire at us. Fortunately, the Valor does finish the Jagdpanzer E100 off, and we get out of that situation with all of our hit points, and we're now on 1362 damage, and we're going to carry on making our advance over these rocks and seeing what we spot. And you'll see that when you're front on ridge lines like this, you can make the gun work, and obviously side on, but you do get caught out sometimes with little bumps in the ground that can make your shots fly up into the air, so do be wary of that. It can be quite frustrating. However, the alpha damage there you can see is really nice finishing off our their artillery, I should say. I don't want to finish off my artillery, that would be quite a bad idea. So now we're going to come up to these ridgelines and we're just going to shoot what our team spot, and you're just going to have to play passively with these two tanks when you are bottom tier. With the Nameless, you can be ever so slightly more aggressive and be a supportive heavy. With the Edelweiss, you can be a sort of more sniping tank and use your view range to assist your allies. But we're going to push up now. I'm feeling quite confident. This was in a long session I played the Edelweiss and the Nameless, Nameless, and I was having a good game, then a bad game, then a good game, then a bad game, and I was playing both of these tanks during this tier 10 silver week, so obviously I was bottom tier for like 60% of my games or more, which was really annoying, but it gave me a good test to see how things go. Get a shot into this, I think it's T55A, he doesn't even go after us, T62A even, he's given up, salute in the air, so we're not going to turn down 3 damage, and now we're going to go after this 53 TP, so another tier 8 tank. We should be able to take this tank out. This tank does weigh, a fair bit. You can ram tanks lighter than you for quite a bit of damage, not the 53 TP, but I'm just trying to bully this tank. I'm going to face hug this 53 TP, trying to get him to bounce off my hull, and all he's going to see here, because the hull is so big on this tank, is my upper plate, and he's going to bounce most of his shots unless he shoots up into my cupola, so I'm just going to keep him nudged, keep him tracked, and trying to get him to miss shots, and we're already up to 3.5k damage and 121 assistance. So now I'm going to try and go after this machine. This can be a dangerous tank that should be able to penetrate me most of the time if it's firing heat or even with APCR. Gets one into me, but I'm now going to try and angle and just come back around the corner, and I think I'm going for the front drive rail. That should go through every time to the machine. However, none of these shots seem to be going, but I think I'm keeping this machine sort of occupied and in place with his tracks off, and we're going to try and get shots in to finish him off. However, our friendly tanks finish him off for us, and now we're up to 3.8k damage, 566 assistance, and I notice we're capping. I'm just trying to get as much out of this game as possible. We get some juicy assistance, and that's where boosting your view range on heavies can come in handy. I'm just trying to ping the person that's capping in our cap circle so that we are able to get some more damage in, but it looks like he's intent on capping, and unfortunately that's it for this game. But that's a pretty good game when you're bottom tier in the Nameless, and I fight in anger and in celebration and have a little swivel and look at the Nameless. So in that game we finished MVP with 3 kills, 3.8k damage, 1500 assistance. We get a first class, 1808 base XP, and block 740 alpha damage with a profit of 137,000 silver. So I hope this was useful to you. If you get these, I hope you enjoy them. But yeah, 5th of April is when they go off sale, so get them before then if you really want them. So until next time, thank you all for watching. I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.